everybody. Hi, everybody. I'm spiritual medium and psychotherapist Kellee White, and I'm here with my dearest, dearest friend,
Yes.
Dr. Shirley Impellizzeri.
Yep. And I am a psychologist in Los Angeles.
Yay. She's not just a psychologist. She's a trauma wizard. So we have so much to talk about with everything. Right, Shirley?
Yeah.
You
I'm going to say I've learned from the best. Yeah, I've learned from the best. And I just actually came last weekend from a 3-day, I was assisting Dr. Peter Levine, who is the gentleman who created somatic experiencing therapy. So it was wonderful to be in his energy for 3 days and helping out.
It's so great, Shirley, because today's episode, trauma and the nervous system, what happens inside of us. So we have a lot to say about so many things going on.
Sure do. You know, it's so interesting because when I first started learning about this, it just made so much sense and it normalized things for me and it helped me feel less what's wrong with me because I understood why.
Yeah, it's so true. And understanding a lot, especially, you know, we are living in a real time of emotional intensity. Would you agree with that statement?
God, yes.
I mean, even just a minute ago, you said, well, when is this going to, you know, like get close to ending? It's,
I know. You gave me a very Debbie Downer answer.
It's like we are, you know, going through a lot of things, all kinds of things become revealed. It triggers all of our things that we need to clear out and work through. So it's a very important time, but we are living in a time of really deep emotional intensity. I mean, frankly, mental health strain is on the rise and the world does feel heavy. The future may feel uncertain. We get through all of this, you guys. But many people are asking the same question, you know, like, why do I feel this way? And I want to say this is not a time to spiritually bypass or psychologically bypass. And as we get into trauma, Shirley's going to do it. We will do a deep dive into trauma. I really wanted to take a minute and I will explain what spiritual bypass is because you guys are going to hear this a lot. This is a term that's coming out now. And then Shirley, you'll explain psychological bypass. Yeah. And we'll kind of combine that and then we'll get into the trauma because it's really important that you understand this idea because again, you're going to hear it over and over. And spiritually bypassing is when a spiritual belief or a practice is used to avoid, frankly, or suppress. How about that one? Suppress. Or like a guru might suppress that. Or escape uncomfortable emotions, or escape psychological wounds, and or even life responsibilities rather than working through them. So it might look really noble or enlightened on the surface. It's really nonsense. But it is not. It has nothing to do with genuine growth. And a feature of spiritual bypassing is like a quick fix. Now, you will all hear me say, learn to meditate. Meditation is important. But you just can't say, I'm going to meditate, and that's it. Yeah, that's just nonsense. It's just nonsense. You can't just push away difficult feelings. And you can't be over. I mean, I'm very optimistic, but I'm also a realist in so many things. But you can't be overly like positive and everything is perfect or divinely planned. Now, do I think that we plan a lot on the other side? You betcha, we do. But we also cannot avoid our anger, our grief, our sadness, okay? And I love this one, Shirley, you know, when people spiritually bypass, they claim to be above an emotion. Well, that's like my favorite thing, you know, or they're above all that. Well, yes, detachment is important, but not this. Nobody's above any of this.
Right.
And moral superiority, I have to say, especially among spiritual people or spiritual leaders or whatever, suggesting that being spiritual makes you better, you know, better than somebody else. Listen, we all struggle. We're all going to struggle here. So, and explaining trauma away as, if you explain it like, well, it's karma. It's your karma. Okay. Again, I just want to go for the throat when I hear that.
Yeah.
And it's not that karma doesn't exist, but it should never be weaponized against somebody. Right, Shirley?
Right. Absolutely. Because the truth is, and I've said this so many times, while we are spiritual beings, we're humans in this lifetime.
Totally.
So while we while we work through our spiritual awareness and our spiritual practice, that's wonderful, but we can't just do that and avoid the trauma of being human, our trauma experiences. And because we all go through some trauma, it's different degrees for different people, but any kind of, trauma, we look at that word thinking it's like a big deal trauma, but it could be misattunements. It could
totally.
be stress for a long time. So we use the word trauma. We should probably choose a different word that encompasses everything, just organically. But we have to deal with that. We have to deal with and to be able to, as you said, it's not about not feeling emotions and being above it. I never feel anger. Well, then you're not human. Then you're suppressing your anger. It's about knowing that you can get through it, knowing that you can go through your emotions.
Well, sure. Explain psychological bypass.
Yeah. So it's a defense pattern when someone avoids uncomfortable internal experiences. I mean, it's kind of like it's an example of it could be the spiritual bypass, where I'm just going to be in my spiritual world and not,
and not do the work on yourself.
Not do the work, right? Because it the experiences of pain, vulnerability, shame, grief. I mean, those are very, very painful. Mm-hmm. And so instead of that, we kind of developed this, let's just be happy. There was a movement once about just being happy.
Positive psychology, I think. Yeah.
My God.
Psychology.
So angry about it because I thought, well, the people who can't feel, first of all, everybody thought you need to feel happy all the time. And the people who don't feel happy all the time because it's impossible would start to feel like, God, there's something wrong with me. I can't do this, and so then it would add to it. Yeah. Other examples are like intellectualizing, being too intellectual, being too rational. And so not really going into your feelings, living kind of in your brain and not connecting to the body.
Right. That's so true. And the difference between a spiritual bypass and a psychological bypass, I mean, basically both terms describe avoidance strategies to avoid something. Whenever anything gets, uncomfortable, I mean, maybe it differs in the language or the focus or something, but it's really avoiding painful feelings, avoiding looking at the traumas that have occurred, or maybe your unmet needs that have occurred. And spiritual bypass is avoiding emotion or psychological work. So both block true healing, Shirley.
Right. Some of the terms that are used is, everything happens for a reason. And while, yes, I absolutely believe that, but we also have to go in it and heal that wound while we believe that everything happens for a reason. My mom and dad did the best they could. Oh, absolutely. Unless you have parents that are sociopaths that were malicious in hurting you, most, if not all, parents do it without intention. However, those misattunements, those moments of stress were still hurtful. And it would still bring up anger and sadness and disappointment and all those emotions to be worked through so you can heal the wound. And then it just becomes part of your history book, but it doesn't have the same intensity when that gets triggered. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. Yeah.
Absolutely. I have to mention this, there's that new expression now, let them.
Right.
I think that just sets me flying when I hear that. I had somebody today actually who's watching the show tonight. We had a long conversation about that. She said, have you heard about that? And I said, oh, yeah, I have. Mm-hmm. She goes, what do you think? I said, nothing about it. Nothing. It's not, I think that let them what? I mean, I don't like the phrase. I don't like what it means to me. I don't like it. And she said, I'm glad to hear you say that. She said, because she was told she was getting abused by all these different people, and everybody was telling her, well, let them. That's the big thing right now. Let them. And she said, and that's how I ended up with an autoimmune.
Wow.
I thought that was a very powerful statement.
It is a very powerful statement because it depends on how you use it. The way I viewed it, and I haven't read the book or anything, but the way I
haven't either.
If someone is responding to you in a way or acting in a certain way that you don't like, we can't change them. We can only then the ball goes back in our court. Do I want to continue to engage with this person? Do I want to continue to be friends with this person, or whatever it may be? So in my mind, let them is okay. Let them. They're going to act the way they want to act. Do I want to continue to engage in this?
So that was a good explanation there.
Yeah. So that's kind of but again, terms can be used for everything, and they can be overused and they can be overgeneralized, and that's kind of the kind of the trouble that we might get into.
Right, right. Well, again, this is not a time for extreme. This is a time to really understand what's happening inside of us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it's interesting. Trauma is one of the most misunderstood experiences because it's physiological. Trauma happens when something in our environment overwhelms our nervous system. And when something overwhelms our nervous system, the primitive that doesn't feel safe, the primitive part of the brain goes into fight or flight. And if we can't respond to those, either fight back or take off running, which as a child, most part we can't, then that energy of the fight or flight gets stuck. You say it's often reduced to a dramatic event, but trauma is not defined only by what happened. It's defined by what happened inside of us, given what happened. So what happens with that is then we start to get psychological symptoms. It initially starts physiologically in the body. Then with too much unhealed or unresolved fight or flight, then we can start to feel depressed, feel anxious. We're scared of everything because the threat might come at any time. Then that happens, but those are adaptive strategies.
Interesting. And I kind of want to mention just for a second, spiritually what happens, because trauma, our soul's always intact, but trauma can fracture our spirit, our vital life force. It can fracture that. And our spirit is what fills us up, fills our soul up. And so spiritually, trauma can fracture or shatter or cause a soul injury, if you will, by wounding the deepest part of us, the deepest part of us. And so it can really disrupt your sense of self and sense of safety and your connection. Mm-hmm. And before we go on, Shirley, I just want to put this out to people that Shirley and I are going to be doing our show on on March 10th, and we're going to be answering all of your questions. So if you could go to psychologyandthesoul.com, and Jared, would you put that up, psychologyandthesoul.com, and ask us some questions, like write your questions out, and Shirley and I are going to get to as many as you can, but if you can get them to us by March 1st. If you go to psychologyandthesoul.com, there's a whole thing that you can fill out that will get right to Michelle where she can get your questions. Okay, I just wanted to throw that out. All right, Shirley, back to trauma.
Back to trauma. Well, I kind of described a little bit of the definition of trauma. It's when the nervous system, when an experience overwhelms the nervous system, and the nervous system, and it overwhelms the ability to cope. So it can be acute. It can be one single event, like a car crash, or childhood traumas like physical abuse, sexual abuse,
like continued abuse,
or just living kind of in a home where your parents fought a lot, and so it's safe, or under a lot of stress. For many people, they lived with a parent who was very, very anxious, and so that teaches the child, wow, the world does not feel safe. The world isn't safe, and so that kind of plants a seed.
Can you explain the term fawn? Because I know we have fight, we have flight, we have freeze. Can you explain the word fawn?
The word fawn, it comes, again, as an adaptive thing where a child then becomes overly compliant about everything. And it's the adult who never complains about anything. Everything is always okay, and is please. Learns, again, it's an adaptive strategy to please. So if I please, the idea of the child is if I please my parents, then maybe I can, they can stop doing what they're doing and I can feel safe. Yeah. So that's what fawn refers to. And, the people pleasers of the world, I guess.
Yeah. So if somebody had went into fawn, the people pleasers, would they also fall into other categories, flight or freeze? I mean, you could go into, it's not just one or the other, is it?
Well, the fight, flight, or freeze are automatic reactions that the primitive part of the brain, without any kind of conscious thought, will immobilize into to save the species. That's how the species got saved, right? Fawn is more of a response to an unsafe environment.
It's like a technique almost that they come up with.
Right.
Yeah.
We can see kids that, that have issues with behavior. And we could be looking at that, the fight response kind of there, and
Yeah, for sure.
and
For sure.
dissociation is, part of the freeze response, where we just kind of dissociate, we check out because it's too overwhelming. And so we kind of split. It's really a split between mind and body to, again, help feel more comfortable, more any way to feel a little bit safer in our childhood. And the problem is it starts to affect self-esteem, because when we're kids, the only way that a child can interpret a parent an adult not meeting their needs is not, oh my God, there's something wrong with them, because they would go insane, because these are people that are protecting me and keeping me alive. So it automatically goes in, there must be something wrong with me. And that plants the seed of self-esteem.
Wow. And spiritually, we interpret trauma as it's not a failure, it's not a punishment, it's neither. It's really about discovering empathy and compassion for yourself and for others. It's very important when we discuss trauma that to have compassion for what you have gone through. That is so healing. It's critical for the process, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It is not weakness. It's really to be looked at with compassion. If we're highly anxious or we fall into depressions, to really look at it, as I've always said, I heard Peter say many times, and I always give him credit for that, is look at it with curiosity. And when we look at it with curiosity, if you're a highly anxious person as an adult, what might have happened to me as a child, or what did I experience as a child that made me feel unsafe in the world?
And give everybody the what Peter says about the quote that Peter says. I guess somebody needs Cheryl now. What is the quote that Peter says about when somebody's had trauma, about witnessing with empathy?
Well, he says many. I'm so sorry.
She's a busy doctor, guys.
I am so sorry. It's connected to my phone is off. It's connected to my computer. So I really. So he says trauma is, doesn't have to be a life sentence. It could be something that we can, in healing trauma, he always talks about how it can give us a spiritual connection, a connection with our spirituality. Because while we haven't healed our trauma, we can be shut down from so many different levels.
Right. And talk about the autonomic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system.
Yeah. Well, the autonomic nervous system has two primary branches. The sympathetic nervous system, which is the activation, it's the survival. It's the one that, when something comes at us and we fight back, And the sympathetic nervous system is the rest and relax and the safety.
Oh, the parasympathetic.
Yes. So only when we feel safe can that come online. And that is the rest and digest. So we digest our food when we feel safe, because the parasympathetic nervous system is online. And that's why people who come from a lot of trauma that hasn't been healed have a lot of gastrointestinal issues, because you're not going to want to spend, the blood to digest the sandwich if you're in threat for your life. The blood is going to stay in your big muscles, to be able to run or fight when you have to. And so people with gastrointestinal issues, many times research has shown that there's a connection with immune deficiencies, with unhealed trauma, because the sympathetic nervous system is always on, Yeah.
Wow.
And so what happens is then when we feel threat, the nervous system goes into fight or flight, and it wants to fight back. And when it can't, it becomes stuck in that kind of activated response. Or it'll collapse, with dissociation.
And is an activated response like anxiety?
Right. We could see it. We can see it showing up in symptoms of anxiety. I mean, what is anxiety but fear? So that means I don't feel safe, period. If I'm feeling anxious all the time. Now, all emotions are very, very important, and they have an evolutionary importance. Anxiety is about fear. Like when we were in the jungle and we saw the trees rustle, then yeah, we need to orient and look at that because maybe it's a tiger that might, come at us. But once the threat is over, the anxiety should, we go back to a resting state. It's when we've had too much of that the nervous system then doesn't go back into a resting state and kind of stays hypervigilant.
I told a story on my show last week, Shirley, and I kind of wanted you to explain to people a little bit about what had happened to me. But I was at the airport and somebody, it was unbelievable. A guy started going crazy at the airport and he was pissed off about it. And I turned around and he was yelling. And I turned around and it was as if I was looking at my childhood worst raging person. And I went berserk. I mean, this guy was a racist. I went after him with full bore. And then I walked in the snow in the cold, -5 for like several minutes. And by the time I got to the car, I had literally, that's when Dawn, as an empathetic listener, said to me, "Did you get it all out? Is it all out?" And in the kindest way, he said it. Mm-hmm. And I literally went, and Shirley and I talked about this over the weekend, guys, because I was so surprised. My response was, I felt it in my body and I let out a giant sigh. And what did you say about that giant sigh? Because as I think about the sympathetic nervous system, I was activated.
Well, that's a huge release of that fight that you couldn't do when you were a kid. And I think it was a neighbor that was very aggressive. Racist. Yeah. And so you got triggered because that that wound had never been healed. And that's what triggers are when we have an kind of an overreactive response. It's not overreaction. It's very real, but that can let us know that that an old wound got triggered that hasn't fully healed. And so you went to the fight, you yelled, you were able to get that out. And then you had, because trauma is healed in relationship with empathic other. We can't really heal trauma on our own because trauma happened with someone else, even if it's neglect, if someone else wasn't there. Mm. So in relation to someone. And so him able to say, "Did you get it out?" In a compassionate way, not in a sarcastic way. That would have
been in fight still.
But you were seen and you were validated.
So is that why it's important if somebody's had great trauma?
Yeah.
To see a therapist that can empathically help them be seen.
Absolutely.
And validate all of it.
Yeah. We cannot heal trauma on our own. We can come up with strategies to help us, get through stuff and not react when we're, people, but that deep,
wound,
deep wound, to heal it needs to be healed in the witnessing of someone else. And so Don witnessed what happened. He
witnessed it.
Yeah. He didn't get angry at you. He didn't get sarcastic. He asked you very empathically to get it out. And so you were able to, that deep release.
It was such a sigh that you had come back from Peter's workshop for the last few days. And I was telling you about, you said to me, the sigh. And I had mentioned to you, this is what happened. And you said, that's what we talked about, the sigh.
Exactly, because that's a huge release. There's this video. I don't know if it's you might find it on YouTube, where it's a polar bear that's been caught to tag. And then while he's waking up, you see him moving his legs like this. And that's the flight response. He wants to get away. And as he's doing this, all of a sudden, he does a huge sigh. And so the Rangers were saying, we know he won't get traumatized by being, captured and sedated and that kind of thing, because he was able to act as if he was running away, get that, that energy of the flight, and then the deep sigh. And that is a huge release.
Wow, Shirley, that's exactly what happened to me.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because spirituality often misunderstands this process. And that's that spiritual bypass. Oh, you were molested and you're going to be okay. Meditate over it. It's like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah. And it's interesting because for people who tend to dissociate, which are other ways, that other adaptations is dissociation, emotional numbness, that meditation is a little contraindicated in that it just keeps you in that dissociated state.
So is yoga sometimes, interesting enough. And it's interesting because, again, these spiritual people out there who are saying, and I am very spiritual. I'm a spiritual medium. I practice this. But I would never say to somebody, well, raise your vibration. I can say, let's talk about raising, we'll raise our vibration, but not when your nervous system is dysregulated. The first thing I do when I'm in a session with somebody is I want to see where they are. Where's their nervous system? I want them to feel safe with me. Where is their nervous system?
Exactly.
Where are they? Can they even hear that I'm about to talk about their mother's coming through? I don't want to set anybody off. I want to make sure that everybody's in a safe place.
Yeah, absolutely. The regulation of the nervous system is so important for healing. And there's different tools and techniques, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But, to regulate our nervous system, because when we're up here, we're in fight or flight, and it's just about staying safe, even if there's no actual threat around.
Absolutely. And I really want to talk about trauma for a second with the soul, because what happens when you have trauma? And I've had lots of trauma. Read my book. I've had lots of trauma. Shirley, you've had lots of trauma. We've had a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And everybody come to Earth, we're going to have trauma. As I said to Shirley, we were talking today, I said, it's a setup, Cheryl, it's a setup. But what happens is trauma takes away your vital life force. And that vital life force can stunt it will stunt, not can, it will stunt your growth if the vital life source or your vital life force is stunted from trauma. So you're feeling great and it's a great day, and then kaboom, there's trauma that hits. That can stunt your vital life force. And the vital life force is this animated energy or essence that imbues all living things, including us. It's like a divine spark. And that's when you can see people that are very depressed. I always want to go light them back up again. I always want to go, no, let's get through these traumas and we'll get you lifted back up again to get your vital life force back up. I think it's so important here.
Yeah, absolutely. Because trauma robs us of the experience of solid ground. Because when we're in threat, we're up here. We're always looking. We're
like we leave the body almost.
Right, exactly. And so some of the things to simply do is like, those exercise balls, to sit on that ball and kind of notice, stand on the ground and sway back and forth to really feel your balance. Yeah, because, the healing from a psychological standpoint, healing trauma involves creating safety. What does safe feel like? There's some people that have never really felt safe, or just moments, right? And, Peter came up with the term relaxation-induced anxiety, where sometimes you will get someone to feel calm, but because the nervous system isn't used to it, they'll jump right into anxiety because it feels scary to feel calm. And so it's creating safety. What helps you feel safe? Rebuilding regulation. It's with a therapist kind of reprocessing the memory so it doesn't have to still be a threat. A lot of the work that we do in SC and somatic experiencing is kind of redoing the therapy. What would you have liked to have done if you could have done anything? And because the brain doesn't know the difference between real or imagined, which is why imagery works so beautifully, the body will calm down. The body will feel that, that release of the fight response when you're able to do it and complete it. And you notice the body starting to calm. And that stays, that sticks.
It does. And from a spiritual standpoint, healing involves making meaning. Like, for instance, the whole Savannah Guthrie and her mother missing. And it's very traumatic for that family. And I kept thinking to myself, she will make meaning of this at some point. And then I saw today that she is, giving a lot of money to help others find their loved ones. And I suspect at some point that may be what she puts her energy into, helping others. I mean, there's something about making meaning of whatever the trauma has been in your life, making meaning of it, and having a spiritual understanding of it. And it really means to reconnect with your own inner wisdom, and then integrating the experience into a larger narrative. I did have many traumas in my life, and I could tell you from my own personal traumas, helping others with either similar wounds or understanding them, or just trauma in general has been a huge focal point of my life.
Yeah. And a lot of, part of the healing process is just to be, be with what you're noticing, you know, to feel our emotions, even if they're scary, which is why it's so important to do it with someone so you don't feel alone again. But the fear must be felt. You know, the grief must be processed.
Absolutely.
Anger needs to be acknowledged. You know, I had one of my teachers, Dr. Dan Siegel, would say that the neuroscientists have a saying, name it to tame it. You know, and sometimes when we just name what we're feeling, whoa, I'm feeling really angry right now, it can start to calm because you've validated it. You know, you haven't tried to suppress it or repress it, or, you know, because that just keeps it there and grows it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a process.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We have, first of all, is viewing emotions differently than what we've taught. Nobody knows what to do with them. And they're just emotions. They're just our nervous system dysregulated. Either high excitement, you know, some emotions can be wonderful, right? Joy, or fear, sadness, depression, anger. And so if we view it that way, I was telling someone who was very, you know, upset about feeling so angry. And I said, emotions are just a dysregulated nervous system. And she goes, wow.
I like that, Shirley. You're right.
I like that. Helps kind of take the stigma away, because no one teaches us that emotions are just, you know, and it's about helping yourself to get through them as best as possible. Anger is not about the anger. We get afraid of anger because of the behavior of anger, because maybe we were around a very angry parent that was reactive. The behavior of an emotion is different than the emotion itself.
Yeah. It's so true. And it is kind of fascinating to me that you can be triggered at any point in life. Like, no matter how many years something has gone by, it's kind of always fascinated me, especially in my own stuff. You know, again, it's like peeling. I hate that expression, but it's true. Peeling an onion. Like, here we go. Here comes some more stuff.
Right. And it just lets you know that it's an unhealed wound that just got triggered. I'll never forget. I have this in my book where it's a silly example in how simple it is, but it's really indicative of what we're talking about. So I was at breakfast and I was actually just learning about somatic experiencing and reading an article on it. And if anybody knows me, they know that I cannot stand runny eggs. They're just gross. They're gooey and gross. So I asked the waitress, and I very specifically said, you know, I have eggs. Can you please cook them all the way through, the yolk all the way, no gooiness? And that was very explicit. Okay. So she comes back and brings me my egg, and I put the fork into it, and it did the gooey thing. And so I called her back and I said, listen, I'm so sorry, but can you please cook them a lot longer? Just burn them. Just, you know, okay. So she took them and brought them back, and I cut into them. And again, the yolk is still kind of crystalline. So then I asked her one more time. I said, listen, I really just need you to just please overcook these eggs. And when she left, I noticed rage inside of me that felt like an erupting volcano. And I had no idea why I was so angry at something so seemingly, you know. And I was reading about the somatic, you know, to just tune into that sensation. So I sat there, I closed my eyes, and I really tuned in, and I could see the explosion of the eruption of, you know, and all of a sudden an image popped into my mind when I was 4 years old, and there was nobody there, and nobody saw me, and nobody heard me.
Oh my gosh.
That's what this triggered. Her not getting the eggs the way I want them triggered not being seen or not being heard.
Oh, wow.
That's what it was.
Well, I don't think I'll look at a runny egg the same. I love runny eggs. When they're overcooked. I have an opposite situation.
But
that's powerful.
Yeah, if you're able to not judge it and just be curious, because of course in that moment I knew, my God, Shirley, you're getting really upset about something so dumb. But I had already been.
It's not dumb at all. We don't say that.
Well,
anybody.
Okay. Yeah. Well, something so silly, something so, you know. And
but I like that you got real quiet, and then that image popped into your head.
You tune in whenever you tune in, because also, you know, it's trauma is about a disconnection between mind and body. And so we mostly live in our minds. And so it's connecting back. So when we notice having a sensation, especially when we get angry or something like that, to tune into the sensation. And more often than not, this has happened in my office with my patients so many times, just like it happened to me in that moment. they'll tune into that sensation, and we just slow things down. And up will pop it, either an image or a memory or something that ties the two together that then can be healed.
That's so important. That it's more than an aha moment. It's a real feeling at the same time moment.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you feel the energy, and then the picture comes back up. That's extraordinary.
Right. And so what happens is when we know, that doesn't mean now, because, we experience what we experienced already. So that doesn't mean that every time, waiter or waitress gets my order incorrect, that doesn't mean that it doesn't bother me, but I so notice that it's not this explosion. It's like, so you notice when you're healing your wounds, you notice either the intensity of the trigger is a lot less. You may notice that you can get through it much quicker when you notice you get triggered. And sometimes you may notice, wow, 6 months ago, that would have really triggered me, but
that's a great observation.
Yeah.
When you can get to the 6-month mark, that's a great observation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Shirley, I think that's really amazing. Yeah. So tell us about some evidence-based practices for the nervous system regulation.
Yeah. Well, orienting is one, which is what we call grounding. So noticing your feet on the ground, orienting to your environment, moving these neck muscles from right to left. And we always do it very slowly. It's like when when we were mammals in the jungle and we heard a noise and we immediately orient to the noise to see if it's dangerous and what we need to do, right? So orienting and just kind of noticing, I'm noticing trees out of my window. I'm noticing my bulletin board in my office. And just noticing that when we get highly dysregulated, where the thinking part of the brain literally goes offline and we're just coming from our emotions. So sometimes when that happens in the office to help someone regulate, I'll say, look for 5 pink things. And I choose a color that isn't very in my office. And so it engages the thinking part of your brain because you have to look, I see the little spot there and I see the book cover there. And so that helps, to calm things down. We can orient. There's a lot of wonderful YouTube videos on orienting. We can orient in the 5 senses. So we orient with our eyes, we orient in our body, notice the chair we're sitting on, notice our feet on the ground. We orient with our ears, what we're hearing, with what we're, taste, and what we're feeling. And so if you're feeling a cool breeze or if you're outside and it's hot.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So what's one thing that people could do?
Yes.
What's another way that they can help their nervous system regulate?
Yeah, one that's kind of a quick fix is to know kind of how the nervous system, inhale stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, which again is the active nervous system. Exhale stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's the calm and relaxed part of the nervous system. So if we inhale for a count of 4, hold it for 4, and then exhale for a count of 6 or 8, we're stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system, and that can help, calm the nervous system down. Yeah. And then, of course, what I said moments ago is that somatic awareness. Notice what you're feeling. If you're dysregulated, okay, take it into the body. What am I feeling? Is it a tightness in my chest? Is it swirling in my tummy? And stay with it. Observe that sensation. More often than not, that observation, giving it a little bit of time and space, can calm it down.
What can you do, Shirley, if all of a sudden you go right to rage? Well, what's a good technique for that?
Right. I mean, you can be curious about it. And understanding what your triggers are is very helpful.
So we get absolutely understanding. Yeah. That's really important. Understanding what in the world triggers you. Know thyself. Start to look at some of these traumas that you've had. What possibly could trigger you?
Exactly. And, when we break it down to like our original wound, it's for each of us, it's a similar thing. For mine, it's always been not being seen and not being, or not being heard. And that can show up in different ways. But when you break it down, it's that one. For some people, it's abandonment when a parent, left the family. And so it's understanding what triggers that. And so you can kind of be a step ahead of it.
I mean, existentially, we would say death. It's death. which is if you're abandoned, you're going to die. If
Oh, yeah.
you're alone, you're going to die. If I mean, it kind of all comes down to
it.
fear
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is interesting. And spiritually, what we talk about to integrate spiritually, we talk do a grounding meditation where you feel your feet on the floor, and then you can go through different body parts actually when you're doing a meditation. And so not the kind where you disassociate and you escape. You don't want to do that. One of the things that too is really good, Shirley, is to journal, like, what does my body need right now? What does my heart need right now? What does that? I mean, really, journaling can be very, very helpful for a technique to help with this. Another thing is, go out in nature, because nature does recalibrate. I mean, when I was in that just angriest state ever, as I'm walking through the -5 degrees and I'm so pissed off, I will tell you this, I was outside and my whole nervous system recalibrated. I think it was unbelievable. It really worked. Another thing is when we are very creative, to spend some time maybe in movement or doing some art or listening to music. That's very, very helpful, because healing doesn't have to be dramatic. It's like incremental.
Exactly. I love that you're saying that, because that's part of what we talked about over the weekend is to heal the creative expression, art, music, movement, to move your body. We tend to kind of shut down in trauma.
Right.
And if you look at it from an evolutionary standpoint, you want to hide so the predator doesn't see you.
Right. Absolutely.
There are different body postures. Trauma.
Show that to people so they'll have an idea of what to look for. This is really important, Shirley.
Yeah. Well, we can go into shame, and so we see someone with their shoulders in.
Now, when you see that, I'll be curious. Does that mean there has also been sexual abuse?
Not always. I mean, it's more of a shame posture, and so you would in a session you'd be curious into what might have been, causing the shame to where, because what it is, it's there's such pain in the heart that the body is trying to protect the heart. I mean, when you look at it that way, the body is trying to protect the heart, and of course, it's emotional pain versus physical, right? But yeah, it's the processing centers of the brain, there's no different circuitry for physical pain or emotional pain. That's why the expression, the silly expression, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's just not true.
It's not true.
Words hurt just as much.
Yeah. It's so true. And, as we navigate this global instability and, I don't know, digital overload, if you will, and all the things that are going on, and so many things, our nervous system was actually not designed for this constant stimulation. So you really do need to go out in nature if you can, or just take some time for yourself to dysregulate yourself, to sit down, relax, if you can, to do that. Right, Shirley? Take some time for that.
And notice, slow things down and notice what feels comforting to the nervous system.
Right.
Putting your hand on your heart and one on your belly.
Don't tell me what that does.
Well, it helps kind of calm the nervous system, because there's touch. That's why weighted blankets can be really helpful for people with anxiety, because it helps you feel you. We have another technique where we just kind of, do this to the whole body with our legs and our arms, to kind of notice our boundaries. Yeah. Another one is putting one hand in the bottom, the neck and the brain, and the other hand here. And that for a little bit. That calms the nervous system.
Real deep self-care.
Right.
Like really paying attention to yourself with what you need at this point.
And slowing things down. We don't realize how we live kind of in an accelerated state. And of course, if we live in fear, then that's going to be, that's going to be how we live. And so really kind of slow things down and notice what happens. Sometimes we expect relaxation, but what we're getting is activation. I'll never forget one time I was in a meditation, and the class was about, mindful mindfulness.
Mhm.
And so he puts us in a meditation, and he said, and notice, what your body feels like. And I started to notice my heart just go, I started to get more anxiety. And ask yourself, he said, notice what you notice in your body and ask yourself, can I be okay with what I'm noticing in this moment?
Mm.
So I remember I tuned in, my heart was going crazy. And I'm like, no, I'm not, because this is a meditation. I'm supposed to be calm and relaxed. And then he said, and if not, ask yourself, can I be okay with not being okay with what's happening in this moment? So the key is being okay, even if it's not what you expect or not what you would want.
Yeah. Shirley, what are your thoughts on tapping?
Well, that there's a very kind of, it's almost like in the realms of acupuncture, because there's very specific points, that acupuncture points when you tap, and that can be really helpful. So these are all tools that, without kind of going into trauma therapy, right? These are all tools that can help in the moment, but there's wonderful to have a tool belt full of tools. There's a lot of YouTube videos on tapping for anxiety, tapping for sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's important to have a lot of tools, period.
Absolutely.
As a human on Earth at this particular time.
Exactly, because they're not going to all work all the time. But if you have many tools, then different ones will work. And that's about, as you said a moment ago, know thyself.
Know thyself.
What works for you and what doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had a somatic experience session with you, Shirley. And it was so helpful through some of the traumas that I had gone through. I can't explain to you how helpful it was, because it stopped me from being anxious about a certain situation. You regulated my nervous system over it.
Yeah.
And so when somebody has a session with you, a somatic experience session, tell everybody what that's like.
Well, first it's important for me to get to know them. And so we talk a little bit about what's going on. And then if I notice some body movements, then I'll point them out. I'll say there was a woman that I was seeing who always was touching her fingers and touching her nails and actually bit her nails and just touching. And I thought, I wonder if there's a stuck energy there, a stuck response. And as she was going on, she was telling me about some incidences when she was little where something happened, and she obviously couldn't fight back. And so what I had her do was I had her put her fist against her hand and just push. Because again, the primitive part of the brain doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. So when you're doing this and you're engaging these muscles, the back muscles and the bicep and tricep, for the brain, it could feel like you're fighting. So I had her do this, push, and then soften. And a few times and see what happens. And it was fight. It was a fight response that was stuck in her hands. And while we're working on other issues, and she's not, but ever since that one session, she's never bitten her nails again.
Oh my gosh. So trapped energy. So biting nails could be trapped energy.
Could be trapped energy. Right. Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think we'll all start to look at things a little differently now.
Yeah. Again, that idea of being curious without judgment, why am I reacting like this? Why am I doing this? Why do I feel like this? With a curious kind of non-judgmental tone.
And Shirley, as you always tell me, trauma is not a life sentence.
No, it is not. That's what Peter Levine says. It's something that we can heal. It doesn't have to be a life sentence. It's something that we can heal, that we all go through to different degrees. Everyone experiences, as a human, everyone experiences trauma. Yeah. And, I wanted to ask you, Kellee, because they do say that, the soul sometimes brings stuff from the past, from other lives into this lifetime. So can you say a little bit about that? Because trauma can be brought in.
Yeah. I mean, before we incarnate, we plan a lot of things. We plan a lot of things that we want to work on. Maybe we want to work on compassion for ourselves. So, and for others. Ultimately, when you have compassion for yourself, you can understand others. And so you might pick a family that has a lot of issues going. I'll take that family. Then I'll learn about abuse, and then I'll learn to recover from abuse, alcoholism, drug addiction, any of that. Earth, when you come to Earth, it's a school. I tell everybody this. It's a major, difficult, hard-ass school. I think it's the hardest school, period. And you come here and you're going to learn big ticket items. Ultimately, spiritually, ultimately, our soul wants to learn empathy, compassion, and kindness. So going through the traumas, you're going to come to Earth for what is Carrie's work, Carrie Gonia's work, which is generational trauma, the family constellation, goes back 13 generations. It's probably forever, even past that, dealing with traumas, and then 13 going forward, which means if we're here on Earth at this time, and I will say we are lucky to be here at this time, it's like winning the lottery to be here at this time. I know people go, oh, Kellee, I'm sick of hearing it, but it really is true, because everything is winding up so quickly. It kind of forces us to work on our stuff. So we could have brought in trauma from 2 lifetimes ago and decided, and all right, I'll take it and I'll learn about what I did then and bring it into this lifetime. So it's all part of this complicated journey on Earth. But to uncomplicate things, it's very simple. We're here to, again, be kind, have empathy, to have compassion. And typically how we learn that is going through our shit daily, and listening to others and being aware of us, know thyself, and start to deal with a lot of your things. Deal with it. It's a really good time now to deal with it, with whatever you have gone through.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talk about compassion, it's so important to understand, and research shows self-compassion is a huge healer.
Oh, it's everything.
We want to hurry up and have compassion for the people that hurt us. And I would say, don't hurry up to get there. That's the goal. You'll get there eventually. Where it needs to start is compassion for you, because when you're able to say, wow, my mother or my father, that person really hurt me, that's self-compassion, and that it needs to start there, because if we try to bypass that, we try to forgive too quickly, then we're not giving ourselves enough time and space and recognition and validation for how it might have felt as a little kid when XYZ happened.
Right. Oh, Shirley, that's so true.
Yeah.
So true. I mean, really taking care of yourself, especially, again, with everything that goes on in the media and everything that goes on politically and everything that goes on in the world. I want to acknowledge all of it. You've got to take care of yourself. You've got to know what you can handle and what you can't. Know thyself. It's a perfect time to do this. Set boundaries. Shirley and I will be doing shows on boundaries. And I want to remind everybody, go to psychologyandthesoul.com. You will see a landing page there. On that page, you can rewatch our episodes. You can, in fact, like, follow, and share and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you can. And also on that, Shirley, I don't know if you're aware of this, on Psychology and the Soul, we have a lot of articles. Per every show, we're going to have an article. So you guys go enjoy that. But there's a whole thing there that you can send in for us of your questions. So any particular questions that you have, if you have a question about anxiety or divorce or, I don't know, depression, I don't know, anything, bipolar, I don't care what the question is, put it out for us. And Shirley and I will do the best we can to answer them. But if you can get those questions in by March 1st, because we're going to do the question and answer show on the 10th. So please, if you can, do that. And also, I just want to say I have a class coming up on March 14th, and it's about being an empath. If you're an empath, it's wisdom and empath. If you should definitely take this class. It's going to be on March 14th. And also, I have time in my schedule this week. So if you'd like a session with me, go to kelleewhite.com and sign up there. Look at my schedule. And if there's something there for you, please sign up. I'm available this week.
Yay.
Yay. And Shirley, I love working with you, honey.
Oh my gosh.
So much fun.
Too. Yeah, it's so fun to help, because it helps me, and my left brain, it just kind of breaks my left brain open and really helps me understand things from a different,
from a spiritual perspective too.
Because we are spiritual souls. I do
Oh,
believe,
yeah.
I've always believed that, even though, I was trained to be very rational, but I've always believed that. You know,
you always have. You always supported my work, and
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's you can't bypass any of it. You can't spiritually bypass, and you can't psychologically bypass whatever you have gone through. Let's look at it now. We're here to discuss anything and everything that we can on our show. All right, everybody.
It's not about erasing the past, or it's about integrating, because that's what's healing. These things did happen to you, but it's about healing them and integrating them so they don't have to continue to affect you in the here and now.
Right on. That's right. That's exactly right, Shirley. Well, everybody, we'll look forward to seeing you next week, and I will be on my show, Ask Me Anything, on Thursday. We'll be talking, I forget what I'm talking about, but I've got a lot of good things to say. So join us, and then join Shirley and me next Tuesday.
Yes.
All right. Take care, my friends.
Bye, everybody.